Welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast, featuring inspiring interviews with Etsy shop owners, hosted by Ijama Elazu.
Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijama. Thank you for joining me for this episode. Have you ever found yourself standing at the Hallmark store or in the aisle at Target or Walmart, or if you're not in the US, wherever you buy greeting cards, and you're surrounded by hundreds of them or thousands, and you still can't find just the one that you want that says exactly what you want it to say? Well, my guest today had that problem and she resolved it for herself. My guest is Jessica Walker. She runs the Etsy shop and website FiveDotPost. Her website is FiveDotPost.com. It's spelled FiveDotPost.com. And we're going to talk all about her journey on Etsy and beyond. Jessica, thank you so much for being my guest and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you for that introduction.
Well, you solved a problem that every time I'm buying a greeting card, I always think to myself, man, I just want to make my own card. None of these work. And then I end up paying $5 for a card that doesn't say exactly what I wanted to say. And then I end up writing a story on the left-hand side to really say what I want.
Absolutely. Or like scratching off mom into aunt because the mom card is what you really want it to say. Yeah,
exactly. So tell us about yourself and what exactly you do. Well, I think people have picked up already, but let's hear it from you.
So I am Jessica Walker. I am the owner of FiveDotPost. It's a greeting card company. I sell retail and wholesale. And I started on Etsy about a little over 3 years ago. And I had a previous career as a musical theater actor. So I never had any intention of becoming an entrepreneur, ever having a product-based business, had no business background, no design background, no anything really that would make you think that this would be the career I now have. But my husband, shortly after we were married 4 years ago, was diagnosed with cancer. And we kind of had to put our lives on an unexpected pause as we navigated what that meant for us, what the treatment was like, just everything that goes along with that. Which, if anyone listening has been touched by cancer, you know it is all consuming. So we each put our theater careers on hold, thinking it was like a brief pause. And in that interim time, I started working at a gift shop in my neighborhood that had a lot of greeting cards. And it was one of those things where I just got that job to, help us pay medical bills. And like, I couldn't work like I normally did with theater because I couldn't travel. And it wasn't something I thought would lead to anything. It was just something, to a means to an ends, making ends meet kind of situation. But while I was there, I had this kind of spark of an idea that there was this gap in the greeting card space that I wasn't seeing. And that gap for us was through cancer support cards, because we were receiving beautiful cards, like very gorgeous cards. But we were 26 and I'm now 30, and we're young adults going through this. And it felt like the cards that were being sent to us and that I was seeing in stores they weren't hitting right, because the way that we were kind of battling this and navigating this was using humor as a major tool in our fight. Because if you can't laugh about it, this stuff can just be so heavy. And so I was like, would it be interesting, or I don't know, like to have humor-based cancer support cards, which on paper sounds ridiculous, but I think there's something there. So I kept like playing with ideas and bouncing things off of Tommy, that's my husband. And eventually I was like, you know what? I think there's a space for this. Like sometimes cancer fighters don't want to be reminded of like the heaviness of the fight. They want to laugh at it and just to be like, look, I got you. And this is horrible. But like, it's going to be fine. And like, just kind of like poking fun at it, because you really just need to laugh sometimes. So long story short, I decided I was going to start an Etsy shop because I didn't know where else to start. I'd purchased things on Etsy over the years. I didn't have any money extra for a website or anything. And I knew that Etsy was like a really like a low barrier to entry to start selling my products, just to see if there was any sort of market for this kind of card. And yeah, that was kind of the spark and the beginning. And it all started with Etsy. And now I'm on many, many platforms we can go into. I sell in a lot of different ways, but that was the original spark. And that just to, if for anyone listening, if you're confused by my platforms, because I'm in the current situation of a merge, that first company that I made was called Better and Company. And, I can explain again why it's shifted in the future, but it started out being two companies, Better and Company and FiveDotPost, and now we're all under one big umbrella as FiveDotPost.
What has the process of merging two into one been like? Because I can only imagine just how, I don't know if magnanimous is the word, but like it's such an undertaking.
So I started the second shop. It was actually a really interesting learning moment. So I was lucky in my first shop, both Better and Company, that it did pick up pretty quickly. I was able to quit that part-time job after about 6 months and sell greeting cards full time, which was mind-blowing. And I do believe the secret sauce there was that I was so niched. Like I had such a specific audience, very specific cards. And that was my kind of like the magic, I think, that gave me that boost that really helped propel my Etsy shop. And I mean, I was able to do that relatively quickly. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to open a second shop. Like this went really well. I had all these ideas for like birthday cards and holiday cards, but it didn't really make sense in the space that I had created with Better and Company. So I opened this second shop, and to my surprise, it flopped. It didn't go well. And I spent about a year trying to figure out like, why did this work and then this not work? And what I ended up realizing, and what ended up being a turning point for FiveDotPost, was realizing that my strokes were too wide. I was trying to please every customer in every situation and have something for every taste. And I didn't know my style enough to be a niche of any sort. So as soon as I realized that I didn't have to have like cancer cards as my niche for this shop, I didn't need something like that, but I needed to have sort of a unique niched style. And I found that through the design style that I use and my humor through like the sayings I have. That was when that shop started picking up. So the reason I ended up merging them is that I feel like there's like you kind of oscillate between these as a business owner, where you're like going all in, doing all the things. And then you get to a point where you're like, whoa, I need to streamline. I need to make this easier and simpler and better and more efficient. And you kind of like go back and forth between those. And I was in the creation mode. Like I need 2 websites, 2 Etsy shops, 2 podcasts, and it got to be, I couldn't make the impact I wanted with my time split in that way. So I realized that I'd be able to make a bigger impact. It would just be easier, honestly, on me to have it all under one. And the reason I decided to group them under FiveDotPost instead of Better and Company, which if you're looking at my shops, it might make more sense to you, because I mean, Better and Company has so many more sales. Like I don't know how many are on Etsy, but like I think over 15,000, and the other one has like less than 5,000. So you would think like, why wouldn't you do that one? But my mission for Better and Company's cards is to have this type of cancer support card widely accessible. And I realized that through talking to retailers that the way to do that was give them the opportunity to buy birthday, holiday, thank you, etc. And then they can also grab in a few of the cancer cards, and they don't have to have their whole purchase be that. It's like I was trying to make them more accessible in the way that I knew would be the most impactful, which was through wholesale. So it's working, and it's really exciting because it's like I'm finally getting my cards in pharmacies and in hospital gift shops and places I've wanted, but it's because they're able to purchase this wide array, but still have that specificity through the card line, if that makes sense.
Kind of. So Better and Company isn't going away.
So my plan is to leave the Etsy shop because it's just doing so well that it doesn't make sense to change anything. But all of my focus now on all new cards are all going to be under the FiveDotPost line. So things that are existing will stay in Better and Company, but all new cards are going to FiveDotPost. And I'm also slowly transitioning some of my Better and Company cards to the new shop, and they're selling well there too. So I know that it's the cards themselves, not the shop. So I'm just, it's been a learning process for sure. I'm kind of still in that like messy middle, but I'm seeing the benefits now and the path, and it's making a lot more sense to me now.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So for anyone who wants to know, and Jessica, you're so right, because when you said you were merging them to the new one, and I looked at the sales, I was like, wait, maybe she means the other way, because as of the day we're recording this, Better and Company has almost 17,000 sales.
Exactly.
And FiveDotPost is not doing terribly. You're almost at 4,000 too. So both are doing well. But yes, my first thought was, why people would kill for that number of sales? But it makes sense what you're doing.
For the larger mission and like the purpose of my cards, that is where I'm headed. And I do believe, and I'm seeing it now, that like at one point it's like, as I was putting all my effort into FiveDotPost, and when I say that, I don't just mean the Etsy shop, but I also mean my website where I also sell the cards, and through wholesale where I sell my cards, that I'm seeing. There was like a moment where I was like, is this a terrible idea? And then now it's like shifting to where my Better and Company Etsy shop's still making the same, but my other ones are now catching up and making more. So it is working. But yes, no, on paper, I totally get it. Like my husband even said that a couple months ago. He was like, is this the right move? And I was like, it is. It's like, you know, when you just feel it's like a full body yes, like it's just your intuition is like, this is it. Yes. That's what happened. And now it's working. But yes, it was a confusing risk at first, but it's what happened.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So for you, in your situation, it seemed, and you know, let me know if it really wasn't. It seemed like it was easy to pick a niche and to really drill down. Like for a lot of new business owners, it takes some time for them to figure out just how niche to go and exactly which niche to focus on. Was that process really as straightforward for you as it sounds like it was, or did you also have some figuring out to do to get to where you found your, you know, special, you know, sauce?
No, it's definitely not simple.
Okay.
But so yes, listeners, don't worry if it's tricky right now. No, I feel you. I knew the audience, that I knew that I wanted to support the cancer community, but I realized that it was more, I wanted to create products that their support systems purchased. So that was a kind of a shift. At the first, I was like trying to market to cancer fighters and cancer patients and people going through the illness. But then I realized that I'm really marketing to their support system, who are the ones going to be sending those cards. So that was a bit of a tweak that took me a while to kind of like sink into. Also, I realized, again, this through trial and error, like at some point I realized that my secret sauce, like, I don't know why that's the phrase, it keeps coming up. The thing that was working too is that I was making cards that for specific illnesses or specific cancers that weren't being served. So like there's so many breast cancer cards. There's like, that is like the you know, flavor of choice for so many products. And these other cancers, like my husband has esophageal cancer, and there aren't esophageal cancer cards. There aren't esophageal cancer support products. So I realized that by looking in and seeing like, what does my audience really need? Like there's so many other people in this audience besides people going through breast cancer, that it took me about a year to realize that I had so much opportunity to just serve the audience in a much better way by getting really specific. And the way that I did that was a little tricky because I have very niche cards, like 3 different cards for multiple myeloma, which is like, do I sell 10 of those a day? Absolutely not. Like I sell those very occasionally, but I knew that it was worth the effort of me printing those one off, as opposed to getting stock. So that was also tricky. Like, which ones do I buy in bulk and which ones are going to be one-off cards? And that's something I'm still figuring out. But I know that by creating products that serve these underserved audiences, that also kind of helped put me in front of people's eyes in the shops.
Yeah. And I think you also have unique insight into the community that you're serving, because I look at some of your cards and even just from a medical standpoint, I get where you're coming from. And someone on the outside probably wouldn't. One of my favorites is the "I'm sorry your liver tried to kill you" card. Like nobody.
No, and sometimes people are like, if you haven't experienced it, you might look at it and be like, that's irreverent. Like, I don't get it. Like, but the people that receive it, they'll send me messages and they're like, this card really made my day. Like it hit exactly right. And that's always what I'm seeking. It's like, I want to create cards that just hit in like to make the connection easier. Cause I feel like the main issue with supporting people going through cancer is you don't want to say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to let people know that, one, you can't say the wrong thing. And the worst thing that can happen, which I mean, I'm the wife of a cancer survivor and I deal with this, is being so afraid of saying the wrong thing that you say nothing.
Right.
And that's why I want these cards to kind of bridge that gap and make connection and support easier. And that's really what I'm trying to do with my whole line, with my FiveDotPost cards. Same with all my cards. I never put out a card just to put out a card, not like, oh, I need a birthday card. It's like, I want to evoke an emotion that I'm not seeing anywhere else, or like a circumstance that I'm not seeing hit on. So yeah, it's absolutely a learning curve. And here I am 3.5 years later, still figuring out exactly who my audience is, who I'm marketing to. And it does evolve slightly, but yeah,
Wow.
that's what I got for that.
That's just amazing, Jessica. I'm just really impressed, and encouraged to know that even after 4 years, you're still, and the success that you've already found, that you're still trying to figure out what's going to work best and what's going to keep working for you. Because I feel like in our heads as business owners, sometimes we think that figuring out what we should do is the end point, and that once you get there, we can relax. But obviously, that's not the case, because when you get there, there are a whole different set of, I want to say issues, but I don't mean issues in a bad way, a different set of things that you're going to have to deal with. And continued success means continued growth and change. And that's where you are.
I love that you said that, because that's something I think is really important. And I kind of wish I'd heard earlier on as a designer, is that you want to follow obviously what your customers are drawn to. You want to make sure that you're giving them products that people want to buy, but you also want to make sure that the process of designing and creating your product is enjoyable for you. Because I definitely, the moments when I felt my business was stalling, or I wasn't getting my audience, or they weren't getting me, was when I was trying to do what I thought people wanted that maybe I wasn't like in my skill set. Like at one point I was really trying to do watercolor, because watercolor was very popular. There was like watercolor floral wreaths and things. And that's just, I am not like a detail drawing person. I'm not like a fine art person. And I was like, you know what? Like at one point I had to say, this isn't working for me. And even though if they're selling, like this isn't something I sustainably want to be doing in a year, 2 years, 3 years. I don't want to dread the design process. So that's something to think about too, as you're evolving. Check in with yourself too, and make sure, like, do I enjoy this process top to bottom? Like at one point I was embroidering tote bags. Did I like it for like a couple of weeks? Yeah. But at one point I was like, this is not what I want to be doing. Yeah. So make sure to do that check in with yourself too, to say like, yes, this is evolving. I'm getting more specific with my audience, but do I still like it? So don't lose yourself in that. I've had that happen a few times.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's wonderful. And not only do you sell on Etsy and your own e-commerce websites, but you also sell on multiple platforms. Can we talk about where you're selling and what the experience is like on those other platforms?
Absolutely. I always recommend people start with Etsy. I'm sure a lot of your listeners do or are going to because they're listening to this podcast. It's so user friendly. And of course, I just think the easiest place to start because you have a built-in audience. Moving to the next move I made from Etsy was my personal websites, which I've had a few, gone through different things, but overall, like I'd say the biggest shock there is when you realize that there isn't a built-in audience, that Etsy isn't marketing to all of these people. People aren't used to just jumping on. It's not the same. So that was a lot of a slower growth than I expected. I just thought, if you build it, they will come. And that is simply not the case with starting your own website. And after that, I decided to branch out into the wholesale market. And that was kind of a whole different ballgame, but it does have a lot of similarities the way that I'm doing it to selling on Etsy. I'm currently selling on Faire, Faire, and Abound. I am mostly I'm mostly on Faire, and I'm probably going to focus only on it because again, I'm kind of in that phase of my business where I'm trying to streamline and not add. So, but Faire and Abound, they're essentially like marketplace platforms, very similar to Etsy, where they have their own customer base and you put up your shop and you sell through wholesale. So instead of customers, like just people in their house ordering your stuff like they are on Etsy, it's stores and shops and retailers buying your products. So I found the process very similar to setting up an Etsy shop. You do have to, of course, apply and be accepted and there's like a whole, like, you can't just start it like you can an Etsy shop. Yeah. But I am currently in about almost 80 stores now since I started. And I think 70 of them came through Faire or Abound. And then the other ones are through just me pitching myself, just cold pitching through emails and letters. But it shows that power of these marketplaces and these platforms that are available to us. And I think that that's so awesome because it gives you just like that little boost that you need. And of course, like I love the idea of one day selling exclusively through my website so that, it's all mine. I own everything, but there's so much benefit to these platforms that I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that because I love the traffic Etsy provides. I love how the ease of the checkout process, and on Faire and Abound, I love the protection that they give you. There's like a lot of fraud protections and things like that are just like, there's a lot of benefit to them. So those are the places that I'm selling currently.
So just to make sure I understand, Faire and Abound are marketplaces where owners of retail shops come to find purveyors of goods that they want to carry in their stores. And that's how you get your cards into other retail stores.
Exactly. And you offer your products there at a wholesale rate, which is, it's different for every product, but for greeting cards, it's about 50% of what you would, but then you have higher minimum requirements. Yeah. So they might need to have like a $50 minimum, $200 minimum, whatever you decide. Okay. And that's the only difference. Okay.
And you're in control of setting the minimums,
yes,
the minimum
completely.
Order quantities. Okay.
You could have no minimum order quantity if you wanted, but you want to make sure that people aren't buying for personal use on there. So it's normally if they're buying for a store, it's going to be, minimum 6 cards, I would feel like is the smallest that anyone would ever order. But it's one of those things where I wasn't ready to do that until earlier this year. I feel like once you are making the move from Etsy to like a wholesale platform, you just have to be able to scale in that way where you can have higher inventory, you can make these bigger supply purchases. And that was a transition that I was ready for, but it's not something that you can just jump into if you don't feel quite ready.
Yeah. And so the platforms, Fair and Abound, they take care of handling all the back end stuff. Like you don't have to check for a resale license to make sure that the person
No,
buying from you has all that. They do all that. They just hook you
they,
up with them.
yes. And the
Nice.
customer can't be on there without proving that. So they go
Yes.
through a vetting process as well. So it's a very safe way to explore wholesale. And I think a really accessible way.
Okay. Do they have an escrow payment system that ensures that you do get your money when you provide the products?
They guarantee every payment, yes.
Okay,
And
good.
we get money in net 30 terms, and the customer can pay net 60 depending on their credit. But yeah, so everything is guaranteed through Fair. They are incredibly easy to work with. And again, I've used Fair so much more than Abound, so I'm speaking more
Okay.
to their customer service. But
Okay.
I found it to be really user friendly and just overall, I haven't had any issues. So it's been about February, March, April, May, June, July, like about 6 months that I've been on that platform, and
Okay.
it's just growing. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes from those.
Nice. Okay, so I will put links to Fair and Abound for anyone who wants to go and check out those platforms and maybe learn more. Maybe you feel like you're at that point where you want to start investigating. So I'll have them in the show notes for this episode. Jessica, when you do this, like sell wholesale, and
Mm-hmm.
you know your cards are going to end up in retail stores, do you ever feel like you're ever going to be competing with yourself, or that the retail stores might undercut your pricing in their stores? How do you protect your business from something like that happening?
I think it's kind of a judgment call, but it just depends. Like you need to be really clear on your goals. So
Okay.
mine are for my cancer specific cards are just to be widespread. So
Okay.
it is worth it to me to do that. Also, I do think there's just so much more opportunity for scaling and growth and sales through wholesale because your orders that come in are so much larger. As far as pricing, it is up to the retailer. So I have not experienced anyone selling them less because they want to make as much money as they can off the product that they have
Yeah.
purchased. So I've had people sell them for a lot more than I sell mine, but I've never had anyone sell them for less than I sell mine. And I think that is that kind of comes down to what you set your wholesale price as. So again, for greeting cards, the industry standard is $2.50 a card, and normally that would mean you'd sell it for $5 minimum retail. So you say what you sell yours as on there, what you recommend, and then it's up to the retailer to sell it for what they wish.
Okay.
But yeah, I've so far had really wonderful experiences with all of my retailers and haven't had any issues like that. But yeah, I guess it's kind of just like a judgment call on your part.
Okay. Have you ever been approached by one of the big greeting card company houses like Hallmark or American Greetings to do some type of collaboration?
I haven't. So I was in contact with Paper Source like right before they kind
Oh,
of blew up. But so that didn't continue. But I'm currently working with a PR representative, and that's kind of one of our big goals
oh,
for
good.
this year and next year to expand into these bigger markets. And I have a lot of friends in the greeting card industry, several of whom have done these larger deals, at Target or TJ Maxx or
Yeah.
Home Goods, like those kinds of things. And they say that like it sounds like on paper, getting one of these orders, these like huge, like 6-figure orders, they're like, oh, well, that's my year. Like that's how I'm going to make it is by one of those. But they say that overall, like there there are pros and cons to everything, of course, but they're like, it's a lot harder. You have a lower profit margin. It's so much work.
Mm,
It's like, they say that truly, even the ones that are making these major sales, that their bread and butter still comes through these consistent smaller sales through the boutiques across the country. So,
mm,
um, of course, like I'm sure some people do make their entire living off of those larger sales, but
yeah.
again and again, I'm hearing like those are kind of like cherry on top moments, and
Yeah.
that their bread and butter, their yearly income does come through these just consistent revenue through these retailers they have these relationships with.
Okay.
And that's something I'm really enjoying exploring, is like getting to know these people. And I feel like I'm getting to know my retailers a lot better than am able to get to know my Etsy customers, just because like with retail, I mean, you don't get to, like, of course I see people on Instagram and you get to know some people, but it's like I'm having conversations with these retailers, and that's been really fun. Especially, I know a lot of your listeners are probably also just party of one entrepreneurs.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like it's fun to have like these kind of new relationships in business.
Nice. Yeah. I like it. And yes, when I think about because I've bought cards at boutique retailers where, you know, it's not their main thing, but it's a line of products they carry, and I always feel like I prefer those because I know I'm going to show up at, you know, a birthday party or something and two other people won't have the same card.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. This is such good stuff. Now, when you first started, you have two websites. Did you build either of those yourself, or did you from the get-go outsource the building of your websites?
I built them myself. I did my first one through Squarespace, which I moved to Shopify, and now I'm using Wix. So I would say honestly, like they're all so similar and all have pros and cons. So if you're on one, just kind of stick with it. I do think that was kind of a waste of time to do.
Why did you do that?
So when I was on Squarespace, I like heard all of this buzz about how Shopify is the place to do e-commerce, and so I did move there, but I found it to be, for me, I'm not a techie person. I'm not a coder. And I found it to be kind of difficult to use the interface. So then I used that for Better and Company. And then when I was starting my FiveDotPost website a couple years later, I really loved Wix. I had used it for a project, and it's just so user-friendly that if you feel like you have no idea how to start or build a website, you can do it on Wix. It's very easy. But I did have a designer design it so that it would just look better. Because again, I'm not a graphic designer. I like as solopreneurs, we kind of cobble together all these skills. But I had the funds to have someone do it in a legit manner. So I did have someone do that. But it was kind of a one and done situation. I maintain it and grow it myself. But yeah, there's pros and cons to both. I think Wix is great. I think Shopify has a lot of integrations and plugins and bells and whistles. But if you're just wanting a simple, clean, beautiful website that's really easy to set up, I think Wix is a great option.
Oh, good deal. Okay. I know we don't talk much about Wix on here, but you're the second person in the last month that has said Wix is what you use. So I'm glad that we're expanding our horizons, because Shopify is not for everyone. It's good for what it can do, but you know, I'm beginning to realize it's not everyone's cup of tea, and from a business standpoint, it also might not be the best for every single Etsy seller.
Definitely. And I mean, just as another side note, the customer service team on Wix is incredible. You can call someone on the phone and they can tinker with your website while you're speaking to them, and they'll fix problems in real time. And it's incredible. I've never had a website platform help in that way, that hands-on. So if you're someone who's kind of nervous about it, like starting your own website, I think that it's a great place to start.
How did you work with the designer did you just give them access to just go in there and make your site look pretty and then that was it?
So I found them on Fiverr, like the task website. And I just, I think it was like $300. It was not very expensive. And I sent them a bunch of websites that I liked the style. I sent a lot of pictures that I found on Pinterest of like just the vibe that I wanted. And then I gave a bunch of requirements of like, I need it to be shoppable. I want this on here. I want these 5 things to be in the toolbar. So I had a very clear idea of what I wanted. And the way that she did it was to make herself the admin or one of the admin for the websites. So she was logging in through her own thing. So it wasn't like she was using my login or anything. So all my stuff like that was safe, but she yeah, she logged in, made herself an admin, and then spent about a week on it. And then I did a couple of revisions, and when she was done, we deleted her as an admin, and now it's all under my control again. So it was a really simple process, and I think like you could do it for a lot cheaper than I did. It's just like she was the designer I wanted. You do it for a lot more than I did. I know people spend thousands and thousands on their websites, and that wasn't where I was at when I did it. So yeah, I highly recommend it. There's a lot of creative people out there, and if you feel like you don't have that skill set, there's someone who can do it for you.
Well, that's good to know, because I often look at my, conromi.com, and I'm like, I wish somebody could just come and make it look pretty. And then I'm like,
they can. Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, and I had like some bare minimum stuff going on, and as I was putting it together, I just knew the end product wasn't what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, she just went in and tweaked it.
Nice. Yeah, and then that's always a concern, is giving someone, full access to your backend. But if it's controlled the way you said you did it, then it feels a lot more comfortable. Like, okay, I don't feel like they're going to take it and run away, and that would be the end.
Yes.
How about SEO? Do you ever deal with that, like optimizing your posts or whatever you're putting on the site to draw traffic in, or is that something you don't really focus on?
The dreaded SEO. I feel like whether it's an Etsy shop or a website, I feel like it feels like such a mystery. Like kind of like the algorithm on social media. You're just like, what do I do to make this attract customers? And I really did learn a lot of what I know about SEO through starting my Etsy shop. So I learned, titles and tags and like things that are long word hashtags and stuff that I've just learned through free YouTube videos. And I definitely, as far as SEO, went to the University of Google and have just kind of patched it together. I do essentially the same thing on my website that I do in my Etsy shop. So I just make sure that whatever's available to be filled in, I fill it in. I don't feel like I do anything special other than just like SEO basics. Because again, I'm not a techie person. And I do focus a lot on the imagery and make sure that, like, I know it's not SEO, but this is kind of a side thing that I noticed about a year ago, that my cards that had like the first image of my listings that had hands in them, like either one hand or two holding a card, were selling better than my ones that were mock-ups.
I've heard
so
that.
Yeah. And so I've been experimenting with that this year, and that I've noticed has drawn a lot more traffic in. I don't know. I guess it just gives the photo more depth and more story and such. But anyways, yes, anything that I do on my website is essentially the same sort of SEO things I'm doing in my Etsy shop.
Yeah. Okay. I have someone told me once, and she does graphic design professionally, and she said, yes, that if you have a product, you want to show hands for whatever. I've forgotten what she said the whole psychology behind it was, but hands sell. Like
hands sell.
Who would have known? I was like, well, do you have to show yourself using? She was like, nope, just hands on a keyboard, hands on.
I don't even use my own because I bite my nails. I have horrible nails. So I literally once a quarter hire my friend who has beautiful hands and nails, and she comes over, we snap photos for like an hour, and then I use those for the whole year. Nice. So if you don't have nice nails, don't worry. I do everything on iPhone and with my friend's nails.
Yeah. Does she paint her nails multiple times during the same photo shoot?
She doesn't, but we do choose the color to correspond with the theme. So for the holiday shoot, I had a lot of tonal colors, so I just had her do white. For the summer one, we had a lot of bright colors, so I had her do pink. But yeah, we don't change nails during the shoot. But so four times a year, she has different polish.
Wow, nice. Okay. So Jessica, I know you're still figuring things out, but at the same time, you've learned enough that you know enough, and now you have a course where you teach people how to start their own greeting card businesses.
Yes.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing it up. Yeah, I kind of went through this moment where I'd been doing my shop for 2 years. I had scaled it to 6 figures. I had figured out kind of like my way of running a business. And it was definitely through lots of piecing together of things. And I was constantly looking for guidance of how to start a greeting card gift shop or greeting card shop, designing greeting cards. Like there just wasn't that out there. It was kind of the same moment where I was like, I'm seeing a gap in the market. I wish I had had this. I know how to do it. So I'm just going to share what I learned. It was kind of also propelled by just DM messages on Instagram. People constantly ask, what printer do you use? What paper do you use? What should I do? How should I set my business up? Where should I start? And I was answering these questions so often that I was like, I think it would be more helpful if it was just all in one place, like kind of like a brain dump of everything that I'd done and learned and tweaked and fixed and and grown and scaled to get to where my business is now. In no way running itself, but I mean, I spend about 4 hours a day on it, 5 days a week. So it's essentially, it's a machine at this point. So I have a system. And I wanted to share that because I knew so many talented designers, particularly one of my friends. He's just a artistic designer. He uses pens and watercolor, and he was wanting to start a shop. And I was like, look, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to put all my ideas in one place. And I came up with the Card Maker Business course. So it's an A to Z course starting with, it has 8 modules, and I'll just go through them to give you kind of an overview. It's Plan is the first module, because I think that is so important, is to make sure you have a plan before you start. It just makes the road easier. So plan, branding, design, producing, launching, promoting, monetizing, and then running. So I did it in that order so that you start, it goes chronologically. Like the day you start, you could have no shop. And then if you just follow the steps straight through, by the end of it, you'll have a shop up and running. So I figured that was the easiest way and the clearest way to do it. And we've had now, like, I think 250 people go through the course, and it's just getting better and better. And I had a lot of fun making it, and I'm constantly adding stuff. And I really like too that you have lifetime access to it. So if you are starting and you want to get into marketing, but it's not your moment, you can't focus on everything at once. So you can go back to it when you have the space and the capacity to go to these different points. So it's just a great resource, I think.
And do you guide people to on how to start on Etsy and then also expand into their own e-commerce and other marketplaces? Or do you just guide them on how to start and then they get to pick what platform they sell on?
The former. I do all of it. So I pretty much just follow the path that I was on. So I do a very in-depth starting an Etsy shop, and then also comparing the different selling platforms that you can use, pros and cons. I show the back side or the back office of like what mine look like. And then I talk about expanding into wholesale as well.
Okay. Do you help with niche selection? Because I know that's a real struggling point.
Yes, I have that in the first 2 modules. We talk about niching, finding your niche, different ways to do it, why it doesn't have to look the same for everyone, and why it's important. Okay.
And then once someone is enrolled, how much support do they have? Is there a group? I know a lot of courses tend to have Facebook groups or some type of community built around the course.
So I had a mastermind as well, which was kind of the community aspect of it. The course itself is very it's self-paced, self-run. I'm always open in my messages, so people will send me voice memos on Instagram with questions if they pop up, and I answer anything and everything. I'm always sharing those questions and answers on my Instagram stories. So if you want to follow over there, tips and tricks for days over Instagram. But yeah, it's self-paced, so you can work at your own speed, and I'm always available for support if you need it.
Nice. Okay. So Jessica's course is called the Card Maker Business Course. I will link directly to that also in the show notes for this episode, but it's available on her website at FiveDotPost.com. And it's, if you scroll down, you can see she has a section for courses and resources for card makers, but I will have the links in the notes for this episode. Jessica, another thing that you do is pop-up shops. Well, at least I know you did one not too long ago because I was reading your blog.
Yeah.
How often do you do those? And are they just self-directed, like you decide where and when and you do it? Or are they part of a bigger selling fair or something going on?
So a couple different ways that I've done them in the past. Most of them are through retailers that I either sell with or are in the neighborhood or in the area. And they'll either be having an event and they're looking for pop-ups to, just like kind of expand their offerings that day. So several of them have been like that, where it'll be outside of a store or in front of a cafe or things like that. And normally in those situations, the retailer will reach out to me. And that's kind of how I got started. It wasn't like a pitching myself situation. It was like connections I knew and had, and it would be through them. And a lot of times in those situations, the host shop, you give them like a 10 or 15% commission of what you make. And it's kind of like a mutual situation.
Yeah.
As far as larger like craft shows and expos and things like that, kind of a different ballgame. And those are just putting myself there and signing up for these things, paying a booth fee or whatnot. But I've never just done a pop-up like on the street by myself. I know that is a thing that people do. But I haven't done that. I'm definitely more a behind the scenes girl. And although I do like seeing customers, pick up your product and talk to you and that aspect I really do like. But of course there's pros and cons to any selling platform, but I'm much more of a e-commerce lover.
Okay. Yeah. Have you found though that the in-person events are profitable enough to make them worth doing, even if just once in a while?
It depends. And I do think I talk about this in my course as well, that it's kind of a toss up. You have to use your judgment, but you have to be available for any and all things to happen. Because in live situations, you just can't predict. You might have a perfect setup, but then it pours rain and you can't make any sales, so I've had days where I've made hundreds of dollars, and then I've had one where I sold one card. So it's ouch. Like if you're in, I know, and then you're like, oh my goodness, like
now I have to give 30% of my dollar to
exactly. And of course, I mean, she let me keep the 5. But it's one of those things where you kind of have to just like, you kind of have to leave some room for the unexpected. There are ways to limit that risk, which I do think is through those craft shows when there's going to be a built-in audience, when you kind of have more control over the situation. And I would say just try to, do it in a way that's as simple and easy for you as possible, so that if something does not go as planned, that it's it doesn't make a huge ripple.
Okay. That's so wise. Guys, please do check out Jessica's card maker business course if this is something that you're interested in. I know I'm a course junkie, and sometimes it would not have even been on my radar, but then I hear a conversation like this and I'm like, yeah, I should start a greeting card business.
We're ready for you.
So yes, I mean, do check it out if it's something that has been on your mind, because obviously Jessica has figured things out, is still learning things too as well, and is right in the thick of it. So I get the feeling that this isn't a course that is stale, or because truth be told, I have bought courses that as soon as I get in there, I'm like, oh my goodness, this person hasn't touched this in like 3 years.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm always updating. Anytime I learn something new and find a better way to do something, the course gets updated.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this like constantly growing thing that is really fun for me too. But yeah, as soon as I learn something, it gets updated.
Nice. Are there, okay, we're coming to the end of our time together, and I was going to ask another question, but I think it's a rabbit hole question. Instead, can you give some encouragement to someone who is in the beginning stages of a business and just having that struggle of putting in so much effort and devoting a lot of time and not yet seeing the rewards of all that time and effort?
Absolutely. I do think that it is the hardest part of starting a business is being so excited, getting everything up and running, and then having crickets. And it's one of those things where, I mean, I think that the phrase I heard, I don't remember who said it, but it was like, don't quit 10 minutes before the miracle, meaning like, if you don't know, it could be so much closer than you think. And just because it's sticky and difficult doesn't mean that it's over. It could be the next day you hit a tipping point and sales start coming in. But it's one of those things where, I mean, for a year, I mean, especially with my second shop, I felt like I was speaking to an empty room. I was posting to 25 followers. My mom was the only person reading my newsletter. Like, it's still like, I still sometimes feel that way. It just depends, like when I'm starting something new, because I feel like I'm constantly evolving, and you're always going to be a beginner no matter what stage of your business you're at. So just know that it is going to get better, but also that it's worth the struggle. I don't think that entrepreneurship has to be lonely and hard and horrible. So I think that finding a community and finding people that get you to talk about it makes a world of difference. I've been in masterminds and been in Facebook groups and been in like all sorts of things that made me feel less alone, hearing other people say like, oh, I haven't had a sale in a week. You're like, oh my God, thank God. I'm not the only one. That camaraderie, but also that inspiration, because then when you see other people doing it, you see that's just evidence that it's possible for you as well. So yeah, I would recommend seeking community in that world, because sometimes our partners, husband, wife, spouses, friends, like who aren't entrepreneurs, they don't get it. And it's hard to talk to them about it and explain how frustrated you are. So yes, I recommend seeking community. Don't stop 10 minutes before the miracle. And if you have to talk to an empty room for a while, people will start coming. Just keep showing up. Keep showing up.
Yeah. I love that analogy of talking to an empty room till people show up. Because for me, I feel that's how I started the podcast for the longest time. I just thought, I'm just talking to, out into the ether. Nobody is listening. But it made me feel comfortable because I tend to be more reserved. So even though it didn't make sense that I was putting it out for people to listen to, I felt comfortable with the idea that nobody was listening.
Yes. And I think that that's hugely important too, that there's so much benefit to growing slowly and starting small, because if you send an email that has a mistake in it, 5 people get it instead of 500,000. So it's like, if you have a product issue, you can deal with it with one person as opposed to having to recall a bunch of stuff. So also like see the benefit of that aspect of being small at the start, and know that it's setting you up for success.
Yeah. Thank you. That's great. I usually ask my guests if they have an Etsy shop shout out. So I don't know if you have one, but I'm going to give you some time to think about whether or not you do. And if you don't, it's fine, because I want to give one, which I don't usually do. But in this case, I will, because I want to thank Dawn Shade. And she's on Instagram as @DearDawnArt. That's at DEER Dawn, DAWNR. Yes. And you know why I'm thanking her?
Yes.
Because she was the one who recommended that I have you on the podcast, and she connected us on Instagram, and here we are today. She runs the Etsy store Dear Dawn Etsy, which is spelled DEER Dawn, DAWN. Etsy. And she's based out in the UK. So Dawn, thank you for making this connection. This episode is happening all because of you. And so my Etsy shop shout out this week goes to you, Dawn.
I love that. I have two, if that's okay.
Yeah.
My first one is at Beckonjoy. It's BECKONJOY. It's a girl I grew up with. She was the first person I saw like really killing it on Etsy, and I asked her a trillion questions, and she gave me the great advice of don't try to do everything, become really good at one thing. And I have taken that to heart. And then my second one is at Drawing a Blank Card. I'm not going to spell all that out because I'll mess it up, but Drawing a Blank Card. Yeah. She was kind of the first card maker friend that I met who I could talk to about printers and ask about how she got into paper source, like all the questions that I now am able to talk to with like the community I've built up. But she was kind of that first one, and she has hilarious cards, especially holiday, which I think she's releasing her holiday line soon. So check them out.
Will do. Now, are these their Instagram handles?
I believe they're both. Those are I was doing their shop names, but I believe that for both of them, they are both. Okay, good. So I will look both of them up, and I will have links to their Etsy stores, Beck and Joy, and Drawing a Blank Card, as well as Dear Dawn Art as well. So folks can go check them out, look at their stores, let them know that you heard about them from Jessica, and just show them some Etsy love. Love it. Thank you. You're so welcome. Jessica, what's the best way folks can connect with you if they want to stay in touch, or if they have questions or just want more information? I'd say definitely Instagram. I'm on there all the time. Just send me a DM. I'm always open to chatting or, helping you out if you have a specific question. And finding my cards, I would recommend everything new is going to my website, FiveDotPost.com. Okay. And yeah, I send out a fun newsletter every week. If you want to hang out that way, chat on Wednesdays, you can join my newsletter as well. Cool. So I will definitely link to all that. And on Instagram, Jessica is at FiveDotPost. So, and I'll put a link to her Instagram handle so you can connect with her there as well. Jessica, this has been so great. I'm so excited for the directions that you're growing in and taking your business. And I just wish you all the best success with everything you're doing. And I wish you and your husband the best as well. And thank you so much for taking the time out today to have this conversation with me. Thank you for having me. I love talking shop, and this has just been a blast. I appreciate it. Great. Oh, you're so welcome. And I thank you for listening to the podcast. I will be back with another episode next week. If you want to connect with me between now and then, I'm on Instagram at Etsy Conversations. And you can, of course, go to convome.com, my website, fill out the form, send me a message. I am always happy to hear from you. I respond. Sometimes it takes me a while, but I always respond. Thanks again for listening to this episode. I will be back next week.
Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, and while you're there, please leave a review too. Visit convome.com to leave a comment or feedback on this episode.